Alright guys, welcome back to VALORANT. Roster drama going down yesterday, and TenZ also giving his perspective on FNS as an in-game leader. NRG have certainly been struggling so far this year, but can he turn it around for the rest of the year? Will FNS summon those guys, make a run through the playoffs to potentially qualify for Masters Toronto? That maybe is what TenZ wants to see. Does he expect it to happen? That is certainly a different conversation. Very much interested in your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I'd greatly appreciate it. Plenty to start with. We're actually going to start in the Pacific because they closed out all of their qualifiers going into the playoffs, and well, we had some big results. So Boom Esports, as expected, I mean, it's crazy to think this is expected now, but Boom Esports were expected to come in here and handle business against DFM, and that is exactly what they did. So these guys, what a story, right? I mean, to go from Ascension in the way that they have done, and G2 have kind of done the same thing. The Guard and Ascension, they won that up to the Pro League. They're making moves as G2, but still, it took them, you know, half a year pretty much to get them to the point where they are today, where they're looking like the very strong team that they presently are, of course, in World Valorant. Boom Esports, who knows how far they can go, but to do so, let's not forget, the second seed, they weren't even in Ascension, right? They didn't even win Ascension. They lost to Sinprasa Gaming, who became Nongshim Red Force, and they got in because Bleed Esports got kicked out of the league, right? So, amazing story. They 13-8'd the Fracture, they 13-6'd on the Ascent, and even though DFM won a couple of rounds towards the end of their attacking side to give them some hope, 8-4 down isn't so bad on the attacking side of Ascent, but yeah, BME had basically no mercy at all, and they close out a relatively easy 2-0. This was, I mean, look, I don't even know what to say about Team Secret anymore. It turned out that certainly after the map win for RRQ, it didn't massively matter what's happened in the rest of the series. They were going to be the #1 seed anyway. But Team Secret are just, you know, next level at managing to win when it's no longer required. Or they were already out, right? Team Secret were cooked, but all of a sudden they then find a bit of energy to somehow go on and win this series. But yeah, RRQ in the end, because of where they were in the bracket and where the other teams were, they probably felt like, look, just getting something on the board here was going to be enough for them. And after winning the game 1 Haven 15-13 on a crazy overtime, Crazy Guy went crazy towards the end. Envy continues to deliver, by the way, on the other side. And then after that, Team Secret turned up. It was a 13-5 on the Ascent and a 13-9 on the Lotus. So RRQ go down despite being your #1 seed from the group. Envy and Team, well, continues to be the shining star, let's say, of that Team Secret roster. And this is now how things look. So this is one of the crazier groups we've seen, really. I mean, the top seed only being 3-2 is not what I was expecting, to be honest. But they end up 3-2. They still secure the #1 seed. T1, of course, made it, but it wasn't pretty. Talon are here too. Nongshim made it. And then it was Zeta, Secret, Global Esports, and DFM, the teams that did not make it in the end. So if Secret just played a bit like that earlier, who knows? Maybe they would have had an opportunity to make it, but in the end, it's RRQ who advance, and the bracket, therefore, is as follows. So Boom Esports get the bye, RRQ get the bye, and, well, these are some first-round games for the ages, really. Talon Gen.G, tough one to call, but serious series. And then DRX T1, I mean, that is 4 days away. A banger series to start the playoffs, really, for either of those two teams. The champions of Masters Bangkok against a DRX team who, of course, are also going to be very strong. And then the winner plays the #1 seed from the other group, although I'm sure they'll be pretty confident if they beat the other team here, they can get the job done there and make it to the upper final. And that means, of course, qualification for Toronto. Paper X are down here in the loser side, so this is the crazy thing, that Paper X will play the loser, I'm pretty sure, of DRX T1. So that is, you know, one of Paper X, DRX, or T1 is getting eliminated in the very first round of the playoffs and will play no further part in trying to make it to Toronto. And that team is going to be under a lot of pressure. Look, if it's T1, then what the hell happened, right, from winning Bangkok? But if it's either of those other teams, then you would expect maybe a change could be in the near future. Pretty crazy to look at this as well. Through the group stages, the top 10 players in the Pacific through week 5 are as follows. Envy's right up here, of course. We've got a couple of players representing from Boom Esports. Jing made it on the list as well. Primi, of course, there from Talon, and Jemkin remains on the list too. But yeah, still the fact that Envy was topping the list here and ended up getting nearly no series wins at all is pretty bad to see. This is just round 4, so like the last weekend of matches stages for EMEA, so you're going to see a little bit more variation here because the sample size is smaller. But just to go through a couple of the top performers of the most recent weeks, and interesting to see Zekken and Bang really step it up of recent times, and that's certainly true going into the major as well, because of the groups, these were the top performers on paper. Cryo feels like he's kind of back, not like 100T was super clean, but Cryo definitely played well. He had a 1.33 overall rating. The rate ended with a 1.26, and you can see here plenty of representation from Sentinels. Bang, Zekken, John QT, and Narrate all in the top 10 of players during the qualifiers. So, look, you could argue they got the easier group or whatever you want to say, but that's still pretty impressive. Luxo, despite Loud not making it, he had a 1.23, Vic with a 1.22. Verno was here as well, which is kind of crazy after the start of the season that he had on NRG. Aspas is never too far away. Jorgamo from the G2 side rounding out the situation as well. Pretty interesting that G2, again, this is kind of classic, right? Their individual numbers aren't necessarily spectacular, but they find a way to win and usually win rather well. Excellent team play, whereas Sentinels were just kind of bowling over their rivals on pure slaying a lot of the time. We'll come back to Sen in a second. Before we get there, bit of drama on KOI. Now, we know that these guys, Movistar, Koi, whatever, they have been struggling as an organization, and there have been a couple of rumors as to what they are going to do. Now, there was, well, VCT Scrum has quote tweeted this and said, don't know what you're talking about, this isn't going to happen, but there have been loads of rumors about what they're going to do anyway. So yesterday there was a big debate on what the plan is, and it seems like their coaching staff is going to be dropped, basically. So Gorilla and T-Mox, some of their coaches, are set to be gone. That was the big tweet that was done yesterday, and suggesting basically that this is purely performance related and to bring about changes based on the team's performance, and therefore some consideration on what they might do with their roster as well. But yeah, it's not been pretty lately, given the fact that this team, I mean, it should have been bringing in Flyer, right, to try and in-game lead and bring up the team. And, I mean, none of these guys have been good. The team seems like an absolute mess. And it does look like that some of these guys are going to go, from a coaching staff perspective, out of the team very shortly indeed. So that was the big tweet and debate yesterday. And as I say, then things followed up a little bit, because there are rumors that maybe Natank, of course, who had his time on Lev earlier in the year, could be an option too. And then we've got talks about Elmer Putty, potentially, of course, after his questionable Fnatic stints. So Natank back to EMEA, we'll see. VCT Scrum says, no, lol, what are you talking about? So we'll see how that one develops over the next couple of days. But I wanted to share this clip here from TenZ, talking about Boom a little bit, actually, but also talking about FNS, and that players like TenZ, they rate guys like FNS, right? Legends of the scene, been around for decades, really, played competitive esports at this point. But notably, I think, for FNS is that the NRG team, it ain't looking so good this season, but maybe there's still time to turn it around. And if TenZ is going to give you some gas like this, then, maybe you could argue that it's not all that bad. There was this as well going around with Naxi, who I believe is now well, again, and out of hospital. I know that, of course, Aspas' wife, she was going through some things, but it seems like that's now okay, so that is good news. But she mentions that Verno, some of the gossip around him, right, from that NRG team, rumors about his, personality clashing with the team and his willingness to try and succeed and all these other things that were doing the rounds at the time that we talked about on the channel at the time, that, basically weren't fair on Verno as a player, and now it's working out very nicely with MIBR, as we full well know. But this is what TenZ has to say on that NRG situation with FNS in the lineup.
If you could choose which IGL would you like to play with? Oh, easy. FNS. If there's ever a World Championship, just let it be known, FNS and I will be leading the charge. Team Canada, all the way. Do you think FNS has a big brain but can execute those plays due to not being mechanically gifted? I think FNS can shoot, kind of. I mean, he shoots still, but I do think the way that the game has come out, though, is you need those players that are more often like an X Factor. I don't think FNS has like the X Factor within him. He's just like, you know what to expect, right? Whereas I feel like having as many players that can just pop off and just get like a miracle 3K when you're down in the gutter during a round, I think is really, really important. And that's just like my opinion. If you look at like the Optic team when they were winning, he didn't need to do it because literally all 4 members of his team were doing it in such a consistent manner of constantly getting these like crazy like kills. But share your thoughts about Boom Esports. I mean, they've been playing phenomenal, and I mean, it's always good to see, like, bro, literally an Ascension team being on top of the group, that is like, bro, that's literally the same thing as America's. The Ascension team is on top, so I think stuff like that is like really, really good to see, and it just shows that like they're here to grind, right? But like, I haven't personally watched any of the matches, so I can't give like an in-depth analysis without like, I can't give an opinion about something that I don't know fully. I'm not gonna do that.
Definitely interesting analysis from TenZ, looking back at when they were on the Optic team back in the day and how they had their takeover players, and now that's not necessarily so clear. I think it's kind of true. A player like FNS, and even to some degree a player like Boaster, although now individually he's playing better, maybe the aim training is coming back to help him or whatever, but you know, you kind of know what you expect out of FNS, and that's okay if you get also what you need out of the other players on the team. That is not necessarily always going to be happening, and that I think is TenZ's main perspective, is to say, look, it's not like FNS can't be a good endgame leader, but maybe there's also an argument in this game right now with the way the meta currently is, whether FNS is really the man for the job anymore. And I mean, who was it? Was it Verno at the start of the season? No, it was Redux, wasn't it? It was Redux who was on that podcast and said that he just wasn't expecting good things from NRG because he believes, and this may well be true, that when a player is in their final season, it just never tends to end especially well, right? Because they're probably in their final season for a very good reason. I think the concern is for some that maybe Som will just also retire. We know that FNS is going to call it a day at the end of this year. Is Som going to do the same? Because Som is a talented player, and look, I'm not going to deny that he can make more money streaming than he could from playing competitive games. I get that. TenZ obviously did the same thing when he arguably should have, well, not should have, right? But TenZ could have easily played for a lot longer than he did, but it makes sense what he did. I don't begrudge the decision at all. I totally understand it. If I was in his position, it'd be very difficult not to make the same decision. But it also is a little bit frustrating as a fan of the esports when you've got players that talented stepping away from competition for some reasons like that. And Som may be in a similar boat. He certainly hinted at it anyway, that maybe after this season when FNS retires, he may do the same despite having, you know, so much gas left in the tank on paper in terms of the talent and the ability and the runway that he's got with the age that he is. FNS doesn't maybe have that luxury quite so much anymore. But very much interested to your thoughts in the comments below. These are just a couple of scrim results to go through over the last day or so. But hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.